Okay, today I am going to record making our black bean burgers. We do use this texturized vegetable protein in some cases, but this time I'm going to replace that with this with the panko breadcrumbs instead to try and make the patties a little firmer. We have our cumin seeds that have already been roasted, so we're going to grind those up in the mortar and pestle and use that for part of our seasoning, along with the coriander, paprika, black pepper, some garlic, salt, and then the base will be with the mushrooms and the onion. We're also going to try for the first time, some green chilies. New Mexico has our famous green chilies from Hatch, so we're going to add some in there and see if we can't spice the burger up a little bit. So I'll be back once we get the mise en place done and show you the next step. Okay, we finished our mise en place. These are the mushrooms. If you cut them all in approximately the same shape or size, well, not shape, but in the same size, they'll cook more evenly. I learned how to do my cutting by watching Chef Ann. So, here's our breadcrumbs. These are our black beans, which have been strained and rinsed, retaining a bit of the liquid from the can, in case we need to adjust the mixture a bit. We chopped up our red onion, and our green chilies are waiting. Then I did the cumin seed, nice, and the smell is incredible, so that's ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our pan. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of water so I can do a water saute, and I'm going to start by adding the onions and the mushrooms to the frying pan to cook down a bit, and we'll come back in a bit. Okay. What we've done now is we have added our onions, our garlic, and the chopped mushrooms to a nonstick skillet. And I'm just going to cook these down. I would recommend not adding salt until the end because that's going to impact your mushrooms. And we're also going to add our other spices in later once we get this cooked down a bit. Okay. So as you can tell, we've sauteed them down a bit. If it starts to dry out, you just want to add a couple of tablespoons of water just to keep it moist. There's no fat added to this, so no oil, no butters, none of that kind of stuff. We're just doing water saute. Once your onions start to get a little translucent, you're going to add your spice mixture. Now, we took all of our spices and just put them together in this glass, and I'll sprinkle that in once my onions get a little more done. Now, while that's happening, you're going to want to have your black beans to be smashed up. It's better if you smash them with a fork or with your hand. When you put them in a food processor, they tend to get really mealy, and it's not a good texture for the burgers. So once that's done, you're just going to set it aside and wait for your mushrooms to finish. Okay, now that they've cooked down a little bit, I went ahead and added my spice mix. You can see it across the top. You want your spices to get hot. You want it to get a toasty flavor to bring out more of the flavor when you're cooking. So always add them to your pan instead of to your dish when it's finished. One thing that I do as well is we use this processor to process the onions down a bit. I don't like biting into thick onions. You do not have to do this step. You can just put these in and mix them with the beans, but I prefer to process them down to give it the same type of texture that are in the burgers. Okay. So we've finished pureeing up the mushrooms and the onions. We've got our container of mashed, rinsed, drained beans. We're going to add the onions and the mushrooms directly to this container. And once we add it to this container, we're then going to also add just a bit of this green chili. So we'll add those in. Have a look here. That's sharp. And we're still going to keep our breadcrumbs to add that next. So I'm just going to pause while we get this ready. Okay, again, due to my crazy textures, we're going to chop up these green chilies really fine. I love the flavor, but texturally, when you bite into it, it's very reminiscent of an onion, which I do not like. So we're going to chop it up really fine and then add it to our mushroom black bean mixture. Okay, so we've added our green chilies and we're going to start adding in the panko. The panko is really your binder. It's to hold the burgers together. It's going to seem like you're adding too much, but just add it in there until it holds together firmly. So let me get a good shot of that. I think it calls for 1 full cup. I've had a half a cup in there, so we'll get some more and add that in. Okay, so I ended up adding about 2 more of the little ramekins of the breadcrumbs. You can see it's starting to really starting to join together and form. That's what you're looking for. As you're mixing this in, you can also add other things if you wanted to add, additional onions. We are going to add some cilantro. So we got some fresh cilantro that we're going to throw in at the end. Just so it doesn't bruise is the reason we're waiting till the end on that. Alright, and we're going to add in the cilantro, and then we're going to mix it around by hand. And what you're looking for is you're looking for this to hold together in patty form. What we like to do is once we form our patties is put them in the freezer and then just cook them from frozen. And we cook them from frozen in the air fryer just because that's what we prefer. Living in the RV, it's, we have a very small space, so we need to make the most of what we can.
We'll do the skillet in the air fryer.
Yeah, we do we brown them in the skillet first. And then we put them in the air fryer to cook. So what you do here, we've got 2 cans of beans. So we divide it into a loaf, and then we divide it in half, and then half again. And 2 cans makes 8 burgers. So here's the way those are going to shape out. And it's easier to get an even shape on your burgers if you start by cutting in the middle and then cut those halves in half again. Just want to show you that. So we cut it in half, and then we cut the halves in half, and then we cut those in half as well. And once they're all cut in half, we then shape them into little patties, put them in Ziploc bags, and pop them in the freezer. And that's basically how you make our black bean burgers. See, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention. Oh, there's our patty. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention. One is you want to make sure that you rinse the beans. That's very important. Whenever you're using any canned bean for whatever purpose, if you're making hummus, if you're making any type of dish out of the canned beans, you want to be sure that you rinse them thoroughly. Another thing you want to do is you want to toast your spices. Make sure you heat those spices up to get the full flavor out of them. As you notice, these are holding together rather nicely. There was no other binder in there. You can use an egg replacement if you want to keep them vegan, but it's not necessary. As you can see, they're holding together very nicely. And once you get them in the freezer and they solidify a bit, you can put them right in the pan and cook them. I like to have mine on a bun with a vegan cheese. You can certainly use whatever other toppings you want, but I found that with the coriander and the cumin and the coriander, it's very reminiscent of a Mexican flavor, so it works very well in a taco, or if you treat it as though it's a Spanish spice. And that is it for us today. I wanted to share making our black bean burgers. I hope you enjoyed it.